Have you ever thought about how your daily thoughts and habits shape your brain? It is no coincidence that you are here right now to gain this knowledge. The universe is leading you to this point to help you realize how your habits, whether positive or negative, can have profound effects on your brain structure and your life. Our brain is a fascinating, ever-changing organ that is shaped by every thought, emotion, and action. This happens through a process that neuroscience refers to as neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity describes the brain's ability to rewire and reorganize itself through experience. With every thought you think and every action you take, you strengthen certain neural connections. These connections create the foundation for your habits and behaviors. However, if you keep repeating toxic thought patterns or harmful behaviors, this affects your brain in an unhealthy way. Negative behavior patterns carve neural pathways deeper into your brain, like tracks in the sand that grow stronger with each step. Over time, it becomes easier for your brain to follow these familiar pathways instead of forging new, healthy ones. Toxic habits like negative self-talk, chronic stress, or constant distraction wire your brain to start running on autopilot, and this autopilot steers you straight into the spiral of negative thoughts and behaviors. Imagine thinking over and over again, "I'm not good enough." Every time this thought pops up in your consciousness, you reinforce a certain neural connection in your brain. Your brain gets used to reproducing this thought and soon it becomes a permanent part of your inner dialogue. Over time, this thought not only becomes a belief, but also begins to influence your behavior. You act on the belief that you are not good enough, and this influences how you talk to people, how you respond to challenges, and even what goals you set for yourself in life. Joe Dispenza emphasizes that negative behavioral patterns program our brain in an unhealthy way. This programming often happens unconsciously. The neural networks that are strengthened by these repetitive patterns work like a machine that controls your reactions and thoughts without you realizing it. You become a victim of your own thought patterns and your brain acts according to the principle of habit instead of thinking freely or breaking new ground. But the amazing thing is, because your brain is plastic, you can reverse these toxic pathways. You have the ability to break these old, deeply ingrained neural patterns and replace them with new, healthier ones. You can reprogram your brain by consciously changing your habits and creating new neural connections through positive thoughts and behaviors. Now that we've taken a look at how toxic habits affect our brains, let's move on to the first steps you can take to recognize and change these patterns. We'll explore how negative self-talk, one of the most common toxic patterns, sabotages your brain and how you can break free from it. Your thoughts have unimaginable power, and the way you talk to yourself affects not only your emotions, but also the structure of your brain. Negative self-talk is one of the most common toxic habits that subconsciously control our lives. These constant inner dialogues revolving around self-doubt, criticism, or fear act like poison, not only for your self-confidence, but also for your neural connections. Every time you belittle yourself or judge yourself negatively, you reinforce the negative circuitry in your brain, creating a reality that reflects your deepest fears. Imagine saying to yourself over and over again, "I can't do this," or "I will never be successful." These thoughts, even if they sometimes only seem fleeting, form neuronal networks in your brain that grow stronger with each repetition. The more often you speak such negative messages to yourself, the more your brain wires itself to this lack, this insecurity. Your brain begins to see these beliefs as reality. You live and act out of these beliefs because your brain has created neural connections that automatically steer you in this direction. Negative self-talk is insidious because it is often so ingrained that you barely notice it. They run like a constant whisper in the background of your consciousness, yet they shape your perception of yourself and the world around you. This kind of inner dialogue can undermine not only your self-confidence, but also your ability to see new possibilities, unleash creativity, and boldly tackle challenges. Joe Dispenza explains that these negative thought patterns leave deep neural trenches in your brain. Every time you devalue or discourage yourself, you follow these well-trodden paths. You strengthen the connection between the neurons that support this negative thought path. And the deeper this path becomes, the more difficult it is to leave it. Your brain follows these patterns again and again, almost as if on autopilot. You are held captive by this negative self-talk without realizing it. But here's the hope: if you realize that you are not these negative thought patterns, but that they are just connections in your brain that have been strengthened through repetition, then you can begin to free yourself from them. You can weaken these neural connections by consciously using positive thoughts. Every time you catch yourself spiraling into negative self-talk, you can pause and actively choose a positive, constructive message. Your brain will respond by forming new connections based on these positive beliefs. An example could be, instead of thinking, "I'm not good enough," consciously saying, "I have everything I need to be successful." By repeatedly recalling this new belief into your consciousness, you begin to reprogram your brain. The old, negative networks become weaker because they are no longer used, while the new, positive networks become stronger. Negative self-talk is like a spiral that sends your brain down negative paths. But with awareness and conscious effort, you can break this spiral and rewire your brain in a positive way. Now that you've recognized the power of negative self-talk, the next step is to identify another toxic habit that's damaging your brain: constant distraction and multitasking. In our modern world, where information is constantly bombarding us, it's hardly surprising that we're always trying to do several things at once. But what may seem like efficiency is actually a toxic habit that insidiously sabotages your brain. Constant distraction and trying to multitask all the time overloads your brain and prevents you from realizing your full potential. Your mind is forced to constantly switch between stimuli, and this incessant flow of interruptions makes it difficult for you to truly focus on a single task. Your brain is not naturally designed to handle multiple complex tasks at the same time. In fact, studies show that multitasking impairs performance because your brain uses valuable resources every time you jump back and forth between different tasks. Every time you get distracted, whether it's by an incoming message, scrolling through social media, or the constant availability of information, your brain has to invest time and energy to get back to the original task. Not only is time lost in the process, but also the ability to work deeply and with concentration. What remains is depleted mental energy and the feeling of being unproductive. If you are in a state of constant distraction, your brain will find it difficult to strengthen new neural connections because you are not giving your mind the necessary rest and time to focus on a task. Instead of building strong, clear connections, your brain gets lost in a jumble of half-finished thoughts and unfinished tasks. This not only weakens your concentration, but also impairs your creativity and your ability to solve problems effectively. Imagine trying to complete an important task while simultaneously answering messages on your mobile phone and perhaps reading an email on the side. Although you feel like you're being productive because you're doing many things at once, your brain is actually overloaded. It doesn't have time to focus on one task and immerse itself in it. The constant switching between different stimuli causes your cognitive abilities to become fragmented and you end up exhausted without really having completed anything. Joe Dispenza emphasizes that constant distraction and multitasking shape our brains in an unhealthy way. This habit programs your brain to always be looking for the next stimulus instead of delving into the depths of a task. Your brain begins to rely on being constantly stimulated, losing the ability to focus on one thing and pursue it with full awareness. The effects of this toxic habit show up not only in your professional or personal life, but also in your emotional state. Constant distraction leads to a chronic restlessness of mind, a feeling of overwhelm and a loss of clarity. You become more susceptible to stress because your brain can no longer concentrate on the essentials, but is constantly jumping from one stimulus to the next. This constant switching exhausts your nervous system and leaves you feeling burnt out and dissatisfied at the end of the day. To free yourself from this toxic habit, it's crucial to take conscious breaks and give your brain space to recover. This means minimizing distractions and consciously focusing on one task at a time. A digital detox can help you free yourself from constant sensory overload. By getting your brain used to working in calm and focus again, you build new neural connections that promote concentration and clarity. In the next chapter, we'll look at another toxic habit that sabotages your brain: chronic stress and overwhelm. These are closely linked to constant distraction, but they interfere even more deeply with your nervous system and have a long-term impact on your mental and physical health. Stress is omnipresent in our modern world. But when it becomes a constant companion, it wreaks havoc on your body and especially your brain. Chronic stress is one of the most dangerous toxic habits that can sabotage your brain and reprogram it in unhealthy ways. Every moment you experience stress triggers a cascade of chemical reactions in your brain that can lead to a weakening of your cognitive abilities and serious health problems in the long term. When you are under stress, your body activates the so-called fight or flight system, also known as the stress response. Your body releases hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline, which are designed to prepare you for an immediate threat. In short periods of stress, this is helpful. It makes you alert, sharpens your senses and ensures that you can react quickly. But when this state becomes chronic, i.e. when your brain is constantly on alert, it has serious consequences. The constant release of stress hormones not only impairs your ability to think clearly, but also damages the cells in your brain. Chronic stress has a particularly destructive effect on the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, planning, and rational thinking. If you are constantly under pressure, this area of your brain begins to function less well. Decisions that could previously be made in a clear and structured way are now overridden by anxiety and overwhelm. You feel blocked, as if you are no longer able to see things clearly, let alone find creative solutions. Another important area of your brain that suffers from stress is the hippocampus, which is responsible for learning and memory. Studies have shown that prolonged stress can affect the size and functioning of the hippocampus. This means that chronic stress not only reduces your ability to learn and retain new information, but also weakens your memory. Many people under high levels of stress report memory lapses or feeling out of it. This is no coincidence. Your brain is flooded with stress hormones and can no longer function effectively. Joe Dispenza explains that stress keeps your mind trapped in survival mode. You no longer act from a state of confidence or clarity, but from a position of fear and reaction. In this state, you are like a prisoner of your own thoughts. Everything you do is driven by the negative emotions and chemical reactions in your brain. You lose control of your own decisions because your brain is trapped in a constant cycle of overwhelm. But there are ways to break out of this toxic habit. The first step is to recognize stress before it overwhelms you. Mindfulness and awareness are key to recognizing the moment your brain switches into stress mode. When you feel the tension rising, you can use targeted techniques to calm your mind and body. Breathing techniques, such as breathing in and out slowly and deeply, help your nervous system to return to a state of calm. Another powerful tool is meditation. Joe Dispenza repeatedly emphasizes that meditation is one of the most effective ways to bring the mind out of survival mode and into a state of peace and clarity. Meditation trains your brain to detach from stress triggers and regain access to your higher cognitive functions. Regular meditation can help the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus to recover and work harder again. Stress and overwhelm are toxic habits that can affect not only your daily life, but also the long-term health of your brain. By learning to deal with stress more consciously and using stress management techniques, you can free your brain from these negative patterns and reprogram it in a positive, healthy way. Next, we'll look at how these negative routines shape your brain in the long term and why it can be so difficult to break toxic habits. But the good news is that through focused effort and mindfulness, you can find your way to reprogramming your brain. Your brain is a formidable machine that molds itself through repetition. Every habit that you cultivate over a long period of time, whether positive or negative, leaves deep traces in your brain. These repetitions, which strengthen the neural networks and synapses in your brain, are what allow us humans to develop efficient and automated behaviors. But this power of habit also has a dark side. Negative routines that you unconsciously perform over and over again shape your brain in unhealthy ways. They cement old, destructive patterns and prevent you from taking new, healthier paths. Your brain's neuroplasticity, its ability to change and rewire itself, is based on the information and behaviors you constantly feed it. Think of a habit like constantly ruminating on problems or repeating pessimistic thoughts. Every time you replay these negative thoughts, you strengthen the neural connections that support this way of thinking. Your brain learns that this is the preferred way to react and you find it difficult to break out of this cycle. Negative thoughts and behavior patterns become your brain's default setting. Joe Dispenza often talks about how deep-rooted neural networks put your behavior on autopilot. Imagine you're a dancer and you've practiced the same steps over and over again. At some point your body performs these movements almost automatically without you having to think about it. The same happens with your thoughts and habits. You have anchored certain negative routines in your mind for years or decades, and now your brain and body automatically react to these negative patterns. You are like a dancer who always repeats the same step, even if this step no longer serves you. But the brain is not set in stone. Neuroplasticity offers you the opportunity to weaken these toxic connections and create new, positive pathways. However, it is a challenge to break these old habits because they are so deeply embedded in your neural networks. The synapses that have been strengthened by repeated negative behaviors are strong and active. They get stronger every time you act or think in the same way. Therefore, you often feel like you are trapped in a cycle, unable to break out of the negative routines. The problem is that your brain loves efficiency. It always chooses the easiest and most frequently used path. However, if this path is based on negative behaviors, it prevents you from developing new, healthier ways of thinking and acting. You may not realize it consciously, but your brain keeps falling back on the same old, familiar patterns, even if they are destructive. The good news is, just as negative routines shape your brain, positive, conscious actions can reprogram your brain. The first step is to become aware of these negative habits and recognize when you fall into autopilot mode. Mindfulness is the key here. By observing yourself and recognizing when you fall back into old patterns, you can take the first step towards change. Once you become aware of these patterns, you have the power to interrupt them and choose new, healthier behaviors. Your brain needs repetition to strengthen new connections. Every time you consciously choose to perform a positive, constructive action or replace a negative thought with a positive one, you build new neural connections. These new connections become stronger over time, while the old, negative connections become weaker because they are no longer used. It's like cutting a new path through a dense forest. At first the path is bumpy and difficult to traverse, but the more you walk it, the clearer it becomes, and the old, negative path begins to overgrow and disappear. Now that you understand the power of habit and the challenge of breaking toxic patterns, let's move on to the next chapter: how to truly break old behaviors and reprogram your brain with new, healthy routines. Once you have recognized how deeply negative routines are ingrained in your brain, the crucial question is, how can you break through these old patterns and truly reprogram your brain? The answer lies not in a one-off attempt, but in conscious, continuous effort. Your brain can rewire itself through deliberate repetition, and the beauty of it is that you have the power to control this process. The first step to reprogramming your brain is to take a hard look at your old habits. Only when you clearly recognize the toxic patterns that are holding you captive can you actively change them. This means consciously pausing and asking yourself the question, when and why do I keep falling back into these negative routines? It may be uncomfortable to bring these patterns to light, but this is where true transformation begins. You can't change what you don't recognize. A powerful way to break these toxic habits is mindfulness. By bringing your awareness to the present moment, you can notice when you automatically fall back into old, negative patterns of thinking or behavior. For example, if you catch yourself spiraling into self-criticism in your thoughts, you can immediately pause, take a deep breath and consciously give yourself a new direction. The key is to recognize the moment when the old program is running and make a conscious decision to interrupt it. Another effective approach to reprogramming is to replace toxic habits with positive, healthy routines. Your brain works on the principle of reinforcement. It will reinforce the behaviors that you repeat most often. This means that when you recognize a negative pattern, you can actively replace it with a new, positive action. For example, instead of getting lost in negative self-talk, you could consciously choose to repeat a positive affirmation, such as, "I am capable, I am strong, and I can change my reality." Each time you do this, you strengthen new neural connections that rewire your brain in a healthier and more positive way. Neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to change, is the key to this transformation. It may seem hard at first because the old pathways are deeply ingrained in your brain. But with each conscious repetition of a new, positive action, you weaken the old connections and build new ones. This is why consistency is so important. The power of reprogramming lies in the daily practice of taking small, conscious steps. Even if you only make one tiny change in a day, it's a step in the right direction. Journaling can help you to support this process. By reflecting daily and writing down when and how you have fallen back into old habits, you can recognize patterns and become aware of where you need new approaches. Journaling is like a mirror that shows you where you stand and what you can change. It is a tool for staying mindful and actively focusing on your change process. Affirmations *** also play a crucial role in reprogramming your brain. These powerful, positive statements not only strengthen your consciousness, but also shape new neural connections in your brain. By repeating positive affirmations daily, you replace the old, negative beliefs that have dominated your life so far. Repetition is key. The more often you repeat positive messages, the stronger the new connections in your brain become. Another important step in reprogramming is visualization. By repeatedly visualizing yourself replacing your old, toxic habits with new, positive routines, you strengthen these new connections in your brain. Visualization allows you to dive deep into feeling and imagining a better version of yourself. Your brain responds to images and emotions, and the more you visualize a new reality, the more your brain begins to accept it as true. Reprogramming your brain is not a one-time process, but a journey. It requires conscious effort, patience and, above all, trust in your ability to change. But with every conscious step you take, you begin to reshape your brain and weaken the toxic connections that have been holding you back. In the next chapter, we'll dive deeper into the techniques that will help you consciously transform your brain through meditation and visualization. These practices are powerful tools that Joe Dispenza teaches to overwrite the old programs and reprogram the brain. Now that we've covered the basic methods of breaking old habits, let's move on to two of the most powerful techniques to help you reprogram your brain in a sustainable and conscious way: meditation and visualization. These practices, extensively taught and recommended by Joe Dispenza, are tools that allow you to utilize the full potential of your neuroplasticity to transform deeply ingrained patterns and align your brain with a new, positive reality. Meditation is the key to accessing the deeper layers of your mind, which are often controlled by old beliefs and toxic habits. In meditation, you create a space of stillness where you can not only observe your thoughts, but also consciously introduce new thought patterns. Joe Dispenza explains that meditation allows you to step out of survival mode, the state in which your brain is constantly reacting to danger and stress, and into a state of inner peace and clarity. In this state, you have the freedom to overwrite your old thought patterns and create new, positive pathways. When you meditate regularly, you step out of the hustle and bustle of everyday life and give your brain the opportunity to recover and reorganize. You can consciously let go of the toxic thought patterns that you repeat over and over again in everyday life and make room for new beliefs instead. Imagine that your brain is a garden. Meditation is the tool you use to pull out the old, withered plants and create fertile soil for new growth. An easy introduction to meditation is the practice of mindful breathing. By simply focusing on your breath and observing the thoughts that arise in your mind, you begin to distance yourself from the old automatic thoughts. You will realize that you are not your thoughts, but the observer of these thoughts, and this is exactly what gives you the power to change them. The longer you meditate, the deeper you will immerse yourself in this state of conscious observation, and the more control you will gain over the thought patterns that shape your brain. In addition to meditation, visualization plays an equally crucial role in conscious reprogramming. Visualization is the art of consciously imagining a new reality that you want to create. Your brain does not differentiate between real and imagined experiences, it reacts to both in the same way. This means that every time you imagine yourself replacing your toxic habits with positive behaviors, you build new neural connections in your brain. When you practice visualization, it's about not only seeing yourself acting in a new, healthier version of yourself, but also feeling the emotions that come with it. For example, when you visualize yourself staying calm and composed in difficult moments, replacing negative thoughts with positive ones or making clear decisions in stressful situations, your brain begins to accept these ideas as reality. You strengthen the new neural connections associated with these positive thoughts and feelings and at the same time weaken the old, toxic connections. A practical example: you could take 5 to 10 minutes every day to create an image of yourself in your mind that is strong, confident, and free of negative thought patterns. Imagine how you master your life with ease and joy, how you achieve your goals, and how you go through everyday life with confidence and clarity. The more detailed you create this image and the more intensely you feel the positive emotions associated with it, the more your brain will create this new reality. The combination of meditation and visualization is particularly powerful because in meditation you create the stillness that allows you to penetrate deep into your subconscious, and through visualization you consciously program the new reality you want to create. Together, these two techniques offer a way to transform your brain from the inside out and permanently overcome the toxic patterns that have been holding you back. Now that you know the tools to consciously reprogram your brain, in the next and final chapter, we'll move on to how you can integrate these practices into your everyday life in the long term to achieve lasting change. Because true transformation is not the result of a one-off attempt, but of continuous commitment. Having explored the techniques of meditation and visualization in depth, it is now time to consider how you can integrate these new tools into your everyday life to achieve long-term and lasting change. Reprogramming your brain is not a one-off process, but requires continuity, patience, and dedication. Just as old toxic patterns were created through constant repetition, establishing new, healthy routines takes time and practice. The key to long-term success lies in discipline. You can't expect to let go of old habits overnight. Instead, it's about continually taking small steps, consciously making a decision every day that leads you closer to your desired change. This discipline is like watering a garden regularly. If you stay consistent, your brain will blossom and the new neural connections you've built will become stronger and more stable. The daily practice of meditation and visualization is one way to strengthen the new pathways in your brain. Set fixed times to practice these techniques, even if it's just 10 minutes a day. Regularity is key to strengthening new connections and weakening old habits. Joe Dispenza often emphasizes that your brain is plastic, it can always change and adapt, but only if you give it the time and attention it needs. Think of these daily practices as an investment in your future, as time you dedicate to yourself to get the best out of yourself. Patience plays a crucial role in this journey. It can be discouraging if you don't see results right away, but remember that it takes time to change ingrained patterns. Every time you achieve a small success, whether it's recognizing a negative thought and replacing it with a positive one, or recentering yourself after a stressful situation, it strengthens the new, healthy connections in your brain. These small victories add up to a big change over time. Another important element of reprogramming your brain for the long term is mindfulness. You can't just let your new habits run on autopilot, otherwise you run the risk of falling back into old patterns. Mindfulness means constantly being aware of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. It means regularly checking yourself and asking, am I on the right path? Am I following the new, positive patterns, or am I falling back into old behaviors? This self-reflection is crucial to ensure that you are consistently working towards your goal. You can also set concrete goals to make your progress measurable. For example, you could resolve to replace certain toxic habits with new, positive routines within a month. Write down the steps you want to take to achieve this and regularly check how far you have come. This kind of goal setting not only gives you clear direction, but also motivates you to keep going when the road gets tough. Another powerful tool you can utilize on your reprogramming journey is sharing with others. Surround yourself with people who have similar goals or who support you on your path. Meditating together, talking about your progress and sharing experiences will help you feel inspired and motivated. The feeling that you are not alone, but part of a community working together on personal growth, can give you additional strength. Transforming your brain is not only a physical journey, but also a deeply spiritual one. Not only will you let go of toxic thought patterns, but you will also build a deeper connection to yourself. Your new, healthy brain will help you to see challenges from a different perspective, full of confidence and clarity, instead of remaining stuck in old patterns of fear and doubt. It is a journey to your true self, to a state where you live in your full power and with your full potential. You are the creator of your reality and your brain is your most powerful tool. By consciously choosing new habits and continuously working on them, you will overcome the toxic patterns that have been holding you back. The new neural connections you create will pave the way to a fulfilling, successful and conscious life. Your brain is moldable and you have the power to shape it to your advantage. By integrating these principles into your life over the long term, you will find that you transform not only your thinking, but also your whole life. Your success is in your hands, or rather, in your head.